Hey, 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 I am Dr. Avis Williams, the proud CEO of the Joyful Collaborative, and this is A Prescription for Joy. Welcome to another episode of A Prescription for Joy. And as always, as I say, when I speak about joy for leaderships, remember, you are a leader. It doesn't matter if you're a classroom teacher, a CEO of a Fortune 500 company, or teaching a Sunday school class. This podcast, or rather, Joycast, is for you. Because we just want to make sure that you know that leading with joy is a strength. It's something that gives you that extra oomph to improve outcomes. And this is whether we're talking about personally or professionally. So I am super excited to be here today to spread some joy. And I have a very good friend of mine here, Dr. Renae Bryant, and she and I are going to talk about branding and multilingualism and just a lot of great stuff. And I'm going to have her share more about herself as we dig in. How's that sound, Renae?
That sounds perfect. I'm so happy to be here with you, Dr. Avis
Yay.
Williams.
And thank you so much for taking the time. I always know people are super, super busy. And with school having started, I get it. So here we go. Let's just start off as you talk a bit about your work and what you do. What does joy mean to you? And when I ask this question in the context of you as a leader and with your branding and with your storytelling.
Yes, thank you so much for giving me the space and time and amplifying my voice, Dr. Avis Williams. You are an icon to me of female
Oh,
leadership, and I just feel so privileged to be in this space with you. You
thank
have a gift,
you.
and I appreciate you sharing it with so many people. Yes, so my name is Dr. Renae Bryant. Everyone could call me Renae. I always say doctor. So anyone that's out there that doesn't have it yet, right? Dr. Avis Williams, want to
That's right.
hear them
That's
and take
right.
that next step. And I have had the pleasure of being a district leader, being a site leader, being a teacher leader, being a coach for principals, for assistant principals. Now I'm a writing coach at the university for people earning their doctorates as well.
Nice.
I started out as a classified bilingual instructional assistant.
Okay.
And before I was ever in education, had the privilege of being able to be in the branding world. And so, yeah, I'm so excited to be here and be able to kind of talk about education, talk about branding, and talk about joy because we have to hold tight to our joy in
Yes.
everything that we do. I know that you always say, and you say it so well, it is our responsibility to hold on
Hmm.
to our joy, to find our joy. It is our responsibility. So
Absolutely.
I wanted to start with your quote because I think that when we talk about educational leadership and branding, joy is
Hmm.
our responsibility.
Yep.
I think anyone that's in education knows that educational leadership is not easy, teaching's not easy. All of the positions
Right.
are not easy in our own context. So
That's
I
right.
always think back to Kouzes and Posner and their book called The Leadership Challenge. They tell us
Yes.
to model the way, inspire a shared vision, challenge the process. We want to make sure that we are empowering people to act and that we are encouraging the heart. And I think, that encapsulates their framework of transformational leadership. And I think right now,
Hmm.
at a time where so many things are changing in education, we all have
Yeah.
to lean into transformational leadership as well as other leadership styles, but really that
That's right.
transformational leadership. And with that, they also emphasize in the very last page of their book, and you would appreciate this from a general in the military. They say, "What is the secret to success in leadership?" And he says, "Love." To love
Oh,
your people,
that's
to love the
powerful.
work. Yes, a general, right? You wouldn't expect the answer
Right.
from him. And so I think that is the key, right? Is
Yeah.
to find joy in the hardest circumstances and to lead with love and joy. And I think educational branding, well, what's the connection here? I think it's
Yeah.
another way that you show joy daily by showcasing what your incredible scholars, staff, families, and communities do.
Hmm.
There are so many incredible things that are going on at school sites, in departments, in districts all over, that I think that people really don't have an idea. Non-educators,
Hmm.
I think maybe parents have a little clue, like when they go to back to school night or they
Yeah.
volunteer, but they really don't see that daily magic. And I think the more that we can pull back the curtain and share the story and empower our
Hmm.
scholars, our staff,
Yeah.
families, and communities around our schools to do the same. So it's not just us, it's empowering everyone to tell those
Love
stories,
that.
share the stories. Then I think that we'll have even more joy and love in public education and
Yes.
educational leadership.
I love that. I love the way you talk about the magic that happens. And you're right. People don't understand all that it takes to do what our amazing educators do. And telling our story would certainly be a lift towards closing some gaps and maybe even clearing up some misunderstandings.
For
And
sure.
so when you think about that from the lens of your work, how does plural lingual, and I hope I said that right, education create not only academic opportunities, but also a sense of justice and belonging for your multilingual families and students. And I bring this up because as we talk about, this storytelling and this connecting with families, if there's any type of a language barrier or a barrier period that prevents that, then we do have to take steps to make sure that we're removing those barriers from our families. So what does that look like in terms of creating that sense of belonging and justice for your families?
Thank you for this question. And so, yes, when we decided to change the name of the department from English learner and
Hmm.
multilingual department to plurilingual, the first thing I did, because it was right after the pandemic and we were meeting virtually. So
Yeah.
we're having these EL task force, well, at the time, EL task force, I'm doing air quotes now, meetings,
Hmm.
site meetings virtually. And so I had the slide, which was like this phonetic slide of like how to say it. So it's
Hmm. Gotcha.
plurilingual, right? Plurilingual. And so this term's actually coming from the universities, like everything, right? It comes from the
Yeah.
university. And so so people know when we talk about bilingual, that's two languages, right?
Hmm.
We talk about multilingual, that is multiple languages but siloed. So I do speak some
Okay.
Korean, I speak some Vietnamese, I speak a lot of Spanish, and my first language is English, so I speak a whole lot of that. But they're siloed. And so plurilingualism is this idea that we go in and out of language, which I'll talk about a little
Hmm.
bit later too. We go in and out of language, and that is natural. And so a lot of times, like in California, we had a proposition called 227. It was the UNS initiative.
Hmm.
And so for a couple decades, we had an English only policy here in California.
Oh,
You could
wow.
opt out and be a part of dual language immersion, but you had to opt out as a parent to put your child in dual language immersion. And so that really kind of convinced people
Hmm.
solamente hablan en inglés, like you should only be talking in English when you're in a bilingual setting. You should only talk in English during the English time. That people shouldn't go in and out of
Hmm.
language, but to the contrary, the research actually supports going in and out of language. So plurilingualism
Okay.
is actually valuing the assets, the language that people bring to the classroom, and
Hmm.
encouraging them to go in and out of those languages, because not all words mean the exact same, and we build on
Yeah.
our another language, let's say English, by actually becoming
Hmm.
completely biliterate in or literate in that primary language. So there's the plurilingualism. So everyone's
Yeah,
like,
that makes
what is
perfect
she talking
sense though.
about?
Yeah, no, but that makes perfect sense that we don't have to have, it doesn't have to be black and white, like one
Yes.
or the other. It's okay if there's some convergence. That makes perfect sense.
Exactly. And so we know that our scholars, they come to our classrooms with funds of knowledge, all of our scholars,
Hmm.
whether they're
Yep.
multilingual or not,
Yep.
plurilingual or not. And they have assets that they bring to our classrooms and schools. So one of these assets is language. And in plurilingual
Hmm.
classrooms, we encourage our scholars to use their full linguistic repertoire. As I said before, it's natural for adults to go in and out of different languages when they're
Hmm.
speaking. And this is because some words do not have the exact same meaning in English as they do
Okay.
in other languages. That's where that phrase lost in translation comes from, because it doesn't actually
Yeah.
translate exactly. We also know
Okay.
from the research that students become stronger in English by becoming
Hmm.
literate in their primary language. And this is
Okay.
why
Yep.
dual language immersion scholars actually outperform, and this is like 30 years of research, they
Ah,
outperform gifted and talented education scholars
yeah.
on standardized exams in elementary as they get higher in elementary. First, you see a little dip, and then you see
Mm-hmm.
them outperform. So they outperform in elementary, middle, and high school, and we see that here in Orange County as well. The reason, and then there is a reason I always kind of laugh, like when you first see people enrolling their scholars in kindergarten, it's a lot
Mm-hmm.
of educators. The parents are educators, they're
Because they know,
doctors,
right?
they're lawyers, they're university professors. Right. There's a reason for that. And that is
Yeah.
because they know the benefits. They know
They
the
know the
research, the
research.
advantage
Yeah.
of being multilingual, plurilingual, and the advantage that that has on the brain, as well as academics, college admissions, scholarship applications, career advancement, and in life overall. So, dual
Yeah.
language immersion and plurilingual education emphasizes the pillars of bilingualism and biliteracy, which are high biliteracy, bilingualism, high achievement. We say
Mm-hmm.
multilingual, plurilingualism too,
Mm-hmm.
sociocultural competence, and critical consciousness. And critical consciousness was actually
Wow.
just added as a fourth pillar. So these pillars really create a sense of justice and belonging for multilingual scholars and families. And so we're also
Mm-hmm.
very, very fortunate in California that we have a policy now. So Prop 58 reversed the UNS initiative, Prop 227. So in 2016, we in California adopted a policy that really embraces language, that's multilingualism for all.
Mm-hmm.
And it's called the English Learner Roadmap, English Learner again, but we'll call it like plurilingual roadmap, right? Which emphasizes creating assets oriented and student responsive schools. And this also reflects, which I'm really excited about, the 2024 California standards for the teaching profession as well, which
Okay.
also calls for our teachers to create culturally and linguistically responsive classrooms and teaching. So our scholars,
Wow.
families, and communities, they should see themselves in our classroom and in the
Yeah.
curriculum. And as we move to more community schools model for approaching education, there is more liberatory, let me say it one more time, liberatory design, out of the National Equity Project, right? Liberatory design
Mm-hmm.
and justice and belonging for all.
Wow. 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 That is so incredible. And it really gives me just such a sense of optimism to know that that type of work is happening and the intentionality behind that. The planning and the research that goes into that is incredible. I love it. That's certainly something to be proud of, and I can imagine that it gives you something to look forward to in terms of your work on a daily basis. And
I
so
would say let me add, it does. And sometimes we silo this work, like, oh, that's the multilingual person,
yeah.
or the coordinator. And I would just say that, systems are not silos, right? So we're
Yep.
all a part of this work, and it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
rely on just one person at a district. And as we see the tide turning, and we see right now we're in a place where people are talking about English only or English as a
Mm-hmm.
national language at the federal level, and maybe they haven't removed funds, and that's going to be a fight
Yeah.
for this year to keep our Title
Yep.
III funds and Title I funds and all the funding. I think it's good to remember the research, which is that
Mm-hmm.
people don't gain more English by being in English only. If we want
That's
our
right.
English learners or scholars who are gaining more English while adding
Mm-hmm.
to their heritage language, we really do need to encourage heritage language learning and dual language immersion, because we know the research, and the research says that they do better. So this cannot be siloed. This is a
Right.
of all of us. So if things change and there's movement to maybe eliminate positions, whatever the case may be,
Yeah.
there has to be capacity building where all of us are like really responsible for this important work. And we know, Dr. Avis Williams, that if you go to Europe, you will meet people who speak four languages at least.
Yes, that's right.
So we
Absolutely.
want
And
our
it's common for that to be the case.
Thank you. And we want our scholars to have that same competitive advantage, because
Yeah.
nothing is better when you go to another country, you speak that language,
Mm-hmm.
or
Yeah.
you are in a call where you can actually have a conversation. It means means so
Yeah,
much to those people that you are speaking their language. And when we talk about our
absolutely.
scholars being competitive and we talk about career readiness, multilingualism, plurilingualism is a part of that. Our
Yeah.
national security and our national economy depends on it. So this is not a nice to have. This
Yes.
is a necessity, the plurilingualism.
I love it. I love it. So you talked a lot about all that's involved, and it takes community. With any of the work that we do,
Yeah.
we cannot get this done alone, right? And so, what role does community, and when we think about the students, the families, all the educators play in building collective efficacy, especially right now where political tensions can sometimes be so divisive? What does that community look like?
Yeah, I really think that when we are talking about community and we're talking about people on extremes. So first I want to say that I
Hmm.
really think that yes, there is divisiveness and people can be pulled to extremes. And then I think when we look at our core values, and you talk a lot about core values, Dr. Avis
Hmm.
Williams, I think we have more in common than maybe we have apart, right? Like
Hmm.
we when we look at core values like integrity or love, family,
Yeah.
courage, a lot of us are going to have those same core values. So I think that that's always a great place to start with
Hmm.
staff,
Yep.
with families to identify their core values, to define them, and then say,
Hmm.
what do they look like in action? And we do that activity in the Ed Branding book a lot. Brene Brown does. I mean, Kouzes and Posner, this is not a new activity, but it's always good for people to keep reminding others, do these activities with people, and when you onboard, do them again and have people, do
Hmm.
they change? We talk about, you and I talked about recently, how core
Yeah.
values you can add to them, you could take away from them
Yeah.
as things change in your life. So having a yearly activity of let's define our core values and let's get up and talk about them with other
Yeah.
people, and then people start realizing like, oh, I have this in common with you, whether it's families, the staff,
Yeah.
community. And I think that that is a good place to start. Now, I
Yeah.
also believe that, we have a movement in the nation for community schools. Started a
Hmm.
long time ago. It's not new. And I
Hmm.
think that we need to build on this. And the community
I love
school
that.
approach is really leveraging the assets of our scholars, our families, staff, and community to build collective efficacy. And so when an organization leans into this approach, you can leverage the voices and agency of
Hmm.
your scholars to
Hmm.
drive collective efficacy and change. So at Anaheim Union, for example, every site has earned the distinction of democracy school. This is something that the Los
Oh.
Angeles County Office of Education builds capacity around, and they offer the status. And so what it entails is scholars identifying a change that they're interested in researching and then
Hmm.
acting on within their site. And then as a whole site, they look at one specific action that they're going to take. And so throughout the years, it's probably been a 10-year process. Every single site in Anaheim has been designated as a democracy school. So
Wow.
is the first district, yes, to be a democracy school district, with every single site identified as a democracy school. And so it was through, as an example, it was through this process at Savannah High School, and we talk about this in the Ed Branding book. They had this motto, the Rebels, right? Or that was like their names, the Savannah
Hmm.
Rebels. But the iconography was literally a Confederate soldier. It was painted on the gym. And this is
Wow.
Anaheim, California, where the House of
Wow.
the Mouse is. Disneyland is 15 minutes, 10 minutes away. This is in the heart of you think of California, think
Mm.
progressive, and so there's still schools with Confederate iconography. And so it was actually through and to over clarify too, this is a Title I high school with majority
Hmm.
Latinx population. Okay.
Okay.
And the whole school, it had been the first democracy school, designated democracy school. It actually used that process to have students research Confederate iconography, research the name, research the
Hmm.
history of the school, and then have a vote. Should they keep
Okay.
the name? Should they keep the mascot? And so the scholars landed on they wanted to keep the name the Rebels because they felt like they're rebels, a rebel without a cause. Like that was their logic, but they did want to eliminate Johnny Rebel. Johnny Rebel had to
Gotcha.
go. And so the board, we had the board meeting at the site. The board
Hmm.
was there. We heard from both sides again a lot. And you can imagine a lot of alumni are very
Yeah.
attached to their mascots.
Right.
And the names around them, right? And so
Hmm.
there were a lot of contentious board meetings with people, not wanting to have the mascot change, and it doesn't mean that
Hmm.
and this and that. But
Yeah.
the board was able to leverage the voice and the agency of the scholars. One, nothing for us without us, right? So the scholars are,
Yep.
this is our school, this is what we want. So why should
I
the
love
board,
it.
so the board had protection too. Like they actually agreed. Okay, they voted. I think there was one abstention, but the majority voted to go along with the scholars and change the mascot, but keep the name the Rebels. And so I think that this is a really good example of how when you lean into your community, when you lean into liberatory design, which is
Hmm.
again, those who are most affected should have the most voice in something, right? So
I love
and
that.
if people are interested, there is a free deck, and we talk about it in the book as well. We give whole credit. So the National Equity Project has a liberatory design card deck, and it's so there's modes of thinking, modes of acting, and
Hmm.
then actual design process. And so it's based on
Wow.
the design thinking out of Stanford, and it's free. And so I just went to it actually
Wow.
yesterday to share it with one of the doctoral students, who is going to, and I love this, he is going to ask, instead of designing a survey on his own or taking someone else's, ask them, what do you think of these questions? What questions should I ask? That's liberatory design, right? So I
Yeah.
went to the site yesterday. They have it in Spanish, they have it in English, they have it in Chinese so far. So excited. Yes, excited about that. And to kind of put a pin on this, yes, leverage your scholars and your
Yes.
families. And this is the role. When there are political tensions, if you
Hmm.
lean into school is should work with scholars, with families,
Yeah.
not for, not, scholars work for, the school. No,
Right. Right.
if you do that, I think whatever, if you're a teacher, if you whatever your role is in education, if you lean more into your scholars and their agency,
Hmm.
I think it's going to help with the divisiveness. I do.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. So you talked about the book and your resources and so forth. So let's talk about your new podcast. It's called Your Story Matters, and I was a guest recently, which I thoroughly enjoyed. And I love the idea of you focusing on not just branding but storytelling as a means of making sure we're doing all we can for our scholars and community. So how do you use storytelling not only to amplify voices, but also to make sure that we're able to promote inclusiveness and really look at healing and social justice?
Yeah, I mean, that's the beginning, right? So if we look at Shane Saphir and Jamala Dukin's work in street data, they
Mm-hmm.
talk about how there's three different types of data. There's satellite data, and that is that you know data that standardized testing. It's end of the year. You look at it the next year.
Mm-hmm.
It's that data that really you can't do anything about, right? It's done.
Right. It's
uh,
done.
Yearly data, and so that's that kind of satellite data.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have what they call map data, which is
Okay.
it would be some kind of like formative assessments, like the PLC model. Like every 6 weeks, we're going to give this assessment. You're looking at maybe grades, attendance rates, and those are important things, right?
Mhm.
Um,
Absolutely.
then you get to street data. And street data is really based on, like, a big part of it is empathy interviews, right? So how
Yeah.
are you getting the stories directly, again, from the people who are most effective? If you say you want a
Yeah.
community school model, are you going to design it without getting input? No,
Mm-hmm.
that is not reflective of a community school approach. So when we talk about storytelling, that is the thing, right? We want to hear from scholars, from staff, from families and community about their experiences. So with the Your Story Matters podcast, and same with the Ed Branding podcast, when I had
Mm-hmm.
that one, I think that both we made a conscious decision, and I make a conscious decision for the Your Story Matters podcast to amplify the voices of women,
Mm-hmm.
of students, and of people of color. So we were really
Okay.
proud with the Ed Browning podcast that we had a majority women and a majority people of color guests on our podcast. And that wasn't by accident, that was by design, because I think the more
Love it.
people hear others, like others in air quotes, stories, the
Mm-hmm.
more they can see that they have, again, more in common than different with them.
Yeah.
And they can also understand maybe why they think the way they do, or act the
Yeah.
way they do, or have a certain, what their journey was like to get them where they're at, or maybe a few more barriers that they faced in their journey that
Yeah.
maybe they didn't face. So yeah, so as far as promoting healing, I believe that every time we tell our story, it does
Mm-hmm.
heal us. And so I'm going to get really personal right now. When I had just graduated from UC Riverside,
Mm-hmm.
I had someone had broke into my apartment, and
Mm-hmm.
I was attacked. And
Mm.
they robbed me. They tried to get me to leave with them, believe it or not. And
Oh,
I was able to talk them into not doing that, because all I could imagine was that I was going to wind up in the bottom of a riverbed or something. And
yeah.
so after that, there was a lot of other things that happened, like, and I will just say that I had to tell my story over and over again. I had to tell it to the
Mm-hmm.
policeman. I had to tell it to the
Yeah.
women. I had to tell it to the doctors. I had to tell it
Mm-hmm.
to the advocates. I wound up, talking to a community-based group, because they had contracted with some people that caused me to go to 3 different hospitals after the thing had happened. And
Jeez.
so every time I told the story, and I had friends calling, and I told the story, um, it went from crying. I went from crying, right, to
Mm-hmm.
then being able to tell it, and then to be able to, and this is the craziest thing, to be able to kind of laugh here and there and be like, yeah, that was crazy, because we humorous
Yeah.
friends, right? So, but I
Mm-hmm.
felt
Mm-hmm.
myself healing through telling that story. And that's a very
Wow.
extreme, I'll say it's an extreme example, but I do want to say to the listeners that 1 in 4 women experience some
Mm-hmm.
kind of assault against them. So that is a non-education example.
Yeah. That's
That
a great example, though, and thank you for sharing that. And
being
so sorry that
able.
happened.
Oh, thank you, and I'm sorry it happens to women all around,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Absolutely.
And so, and men, right, and boys and girls. So, healing is so central. When you're telling your story, you
Yeah.
get to be healed, and other people find healing in your story. So I'm a big believer in that if something happens to you, you have to find a way, there, almost like the dharma, like, what is the purpose in that
Mm.
happening to you? And so for me, I started speaking about being a survivor. And so it was like at Take Back the Night events and different events and college events, and
Yeah.
even speaking to first responders 10 years later after they finally linked, because my kit sat in a closet for like
Wow.
years. And so when they finally found the person, then to speak to emergency providers about this. And so,
Mm-hmm.
yes, all of this to say that it is so important that we give space for people to tell their stories, to
Yeah.
share their stories, and to make sure that all people are allowed to, whether it's, you're a classroom teacher and you're having journaling, or you're
Hmm.
allowing students to podcast, or, thinking of different ways of people telling their story and elevating it. And 100%, I think that this is a way, every time someone tells their story, it's a way of
Hmm.
healing, inclusion, and social justice. And so
Yeah.
on the Your Story Matters podcast, one of the first episodes was a Know Your Rights episode. So it broke the
Okay.
format. I know the Riverside FM people say, keep your format consistent. And I do. Like, my format is consistent all the time, except when I did this episode, and I
Yeah.
do another episode around this topic. And so
Okay.
we talk about Know Your Rights. It was a very, it was very much like, okay, what should people do if they are stopped? What should people do if someone comes to their house? What should people do?
Hmm.
Again, this isn't political. This is every single person,
Right.
regardless of your immigration status, should know your rights. And
Yeah.
all we have to do is look at World War II, Nazi Germany, to know that.
Mm.
Because first
Yeah.
they came for, right? That poem, first they came for.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
so yeah, so it seems so silly, like, oh, a podcast, right? A podcast is powerful. And I learned something, because once you invited me, I was like, I'm going to research Riverside FM. And one of the tips that the guy gave was, hey, if you do 10 episodes, you are
Hmm.
already in the 10% of podcasts. Like, most people do.
Mm.
So you're heading to 10, like I'm heading to 20. So we're in the top 10 of podcasts. And especially in education, there aren't a lot of people doing podcasts in the joy
Yeah.
space, right? So
Yeah.
so this is powerful work that we're doing. I'm going to claim it. And this is powerful work that our teachers can do by empowering our scholars to
That's
also do
right.
podcasting, our families to do podcasting. And all it
Hmm.
takes, we don't have to have fancy stuff like you and I have. You could have a Google Meet, which is free. You can
Yeah.
record and you can put it out. You don't have to go to Buzzsprout. You don't have to have it on iTunes to have it reach people.
That's
Just
right.
empower people. And I think through that, again, you will promote more healing, more inclusion, and more social justice.
I love it. I love it. Yes. And you're right. This is a great means of healing, and it's something that anybody can do. So I appreciate you lifting that part up. So when you think about what you just stated, and we've talked a bit about community and telling our stories and so forth. And, we live in a time that's challenging a lot of our leaders. And I would love to hear your call to action for leaders to encourage them to tell their stories as a means of advocating for those who remain the furthest from opportunity. Because I do believe that when we look at doing equitable work, yes, we want to ensure that everyone's needs are met. And there's also a space where we really pay close attention to our scholars and families who are the furthest away from opportunity. So, what's your call to action for leaders to encourage them to use storytelling as a means of advocating?
Yeah. So, first, I want to say, and it, I know it, I think we all know it, but sometimes we forget it. And that is that saying, like, relationships, 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 right? That is the
Yes,
first
yes.
thing. And so
Mm-hmm.
connection is a part of that. And again, we connect through others, not through showing them a bunch of numbers. Unfortunately, I mean, that may resonate with some, but it doesn't resonate with everyone, but
Yep.
really through narrative. We
Mm-hmm.
connect with others through narrative. And so right now, we are the media. We talk about in the book, back in the day,
Mm.
because I will reveal, right, I'm a Gen Xer. So back in the day, we had fanzines, and they're making like a comeback
Yep.
now, right? They haven't
Right.
fanzines. And so anyone that doesn't know, a fanzine is like, you took paper, you cut and paste, you photocopied, you made like a little zine. It was called a zine, right? And so back in the day, that was the way you became the media. You made your own magazine, right? You
Right.
shared it like in collectives or at concerts or whatever, and record
Yep.
stores, and there were record stores back then, people. And so it was harder. Now Chomsky talks about, like, he had a whole
Mhm.
book, becoming the media, because
Yeah.
he saw in his wisdom, like, the media really consolidating into a few hands. And so
Okay.
the answer when that happens is more people have to, quote unquote, air quotes here, become the media. And so now that is very easy. You and I, Dr. Avis Williams, we are the media. We put
We
out
are.
podcasts. People are the media on social media. That's what that's
Yeah.
about. You know, TikTok,
Yeah.
the influencers, they are the media, all of, whether good or bad. We have like the curtain's not only, you know, been pulled back, it has completely been torn down and stepped
Yeah.
on and set on fire. Like everyone can become media now. So school districts have been very slow to do this, right? And maybe some
Mm-hmm.
other industries as well. So I would say you don't have to depend on outside sources
Mm-hmm.
to tell the stories or share the stories as far as education goes. And I think for any business, and other businesses are faster to this, right? They know how to empower
Yeah.
their staff to tell the stories. But I definitely think for education, empower your scholars, staff, families, and community members to share your stories, the stories of the incredible
Yep.
things happening in our classrooms, sites, and districts. I always say, this is kind of funny, like, you know, like if you're at a high school and you're walking around, you're like one of 5 administrators walking around with, let's say, 2,000 scholars, right? You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yes.
You think to yourself, if they only knew they outnumbered us, right? Like,
Right, right,
if
right.
they only
By a long
realized,
shot.
right? If they
Yes.
organized and somehow, right? So luckily they never do, right? But you know, they do outnumber us. And so we
Yeah.
can use that, we can leverage that to our
Hmm.
advantage, right? So empower
Absolutely.
our scholars, like I said before when I gave the, you know, the board example, to use their voice and agency again,
Hmm.
just like I said before, to advocate at board meetings. That wasn't the
Yeah.
first time. That was, you know, Michael Masuda, the superintendent at Anaheim Union High School District. He is retiring, so congratulations to him. He is politically gifted, and that is, I mean, he had a poli sci major, right? So not
Okay.
every superintendent comes with a poli sci major, right? So he was gifted in that way. So he knew how to leverage the community. He was also a community organizer. Not every superintendent comes with that background, and not every principal does either.
Awesome.
So this idea of you know, really thinking about how we are empowering scholars, empowering families to speak at board meetings, city council meetings, at their state and federal level. And going back to liberatory design, I mean, true
Hmm.
liberatory design is empowering others to use their voices to advocate. So, and we talk about this too, like our scholars are way ahead of us, are way ahead of their
Yeah.
families, maybe to their chagrin, but they get it. Most of the
Yeah.
things that we're advocating for social justice, they're already on board. Like they get it.
Yeah.
So it's the adults that need to catch up. And
That's
so,
right.
again, leveraging the voices of scholars. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much for dropping that knowledge and for being here, taking the time to be here. You've mentioned your book, and of course, we talked about your podcast. So, but before we close out, tell everybody about where they can find your book and podcast, and you know how they can reach out to you if they want to learn more.
Well, thank you. And Dr. Avis Williams, first, I just want to thank you for creating this space, for amplifying my story, for amplifying my voice,
Absolutely.
which in turn allows me to amplify others. Yeah, I want to thank you for being just an incredible educator, human leader,
Thank
all the
you.
things. I really admire you. I want to thank you for putting the emphasis on joy, helping people to claim their joy. I love your statement that joy is our responsibility and we have to hold tight
Yes.
to it. So I just
Yes.
thank you for all the work you do, you've done, and you're going to do because you are
I
a force
appreciate
of
that.
nature. And for me, yeah, again, my name is Dr. Renae Bryant. You can call me Renae. And behind me on my screen, if you're watching, is the Ed Branding book, How to Build Educational Influence with Educational Leadership with Social Influence. My head's blocking the title. I should have it memorized by now. But yes, How to Build Educational Leadership with Social Influence. It's a mouthful, but we call it the Ed Branding book. And so,
Yes.
yeah, we're super proud of this book. I think it's very timely to empower people again to share their stories with tips and strategies and how to do that. And also, we do a lot of leadership work in the book as well. It's a book,
Mhm.
again, for superintendents, for principals, for board members, for classified staff, for certificated staff, for families. We like to say it's a book for everyone, Dr. Avis Williams. So,
I
yeah,
love it. I love
it's
it.
out on Dave Burgess Consulting Inc. DBC. Dave Burgess is famous for Teach Like a Pirate, but he also, just in case people don't
Yes.
know this, he has about 80 authors and about almost 200 releases now. So this is his
Oh,
full
wow.
gig, is being a publishing company, being an author and a speaker. And so I'm following his lead, and I am. You can find me. My like kind of. I'm just building it up. It's not that great yet, but my website is www. Dr. Renae, Renae Bryant, Bryant, like Kobe Bryant, .com. But you can find me on LinkedIn and all the socials. That's probably the easiest way to connect with me. And yeah, I'm available as a speaker. That's something that I've gotten into this
Love it.
year, is actually traveling out of state and speaking. It's really filled my heart with a lot of joy, to build the capacity of others, something I think that you're very passionate about as well. And
Mhm.
yeah, so available for that, virtually as well. And give us, yeah, the Your Story Matters podcast. If you would like to have your voice amplified, reach out to me. We'll get you on, and yeah, go forth and become the media people. And as Dr. Avis
Yes.
Williams says, we are all leaders. Everyone is a leader because you lead yourself. And that's
There
first
you
and
go.
foremost. You have to lead yourself. So thank you, Dr. Avis Williams. I love you,
Thank
and thank you for
you.
this time.
I love you back, and you are brilliant. And please reach out to her if you've got any questions or just want to learn more, especially about how we can continue to do this good work, this amazing work in our communities that you are doing and that you are leading, Renae. So thank you so much for your leadership, for your energy, and for your sisterhood. I appreciate you.
Love you, friend.
Yes. And so as we wrap up, I always love to end with an Avisism. And these are just little tidbits of information, knowledge, maybe lessons I've learned along the way. And my Avisism for today is joy speaks louder than shade ever could. Okay, joy speaks louder than shade ever could. So, why not be happy? We can always, and this is about relationships. This is about how we see other people. It's easy to throw shade, but sometimes, please rethink that and think about how much easier it would be just to smile, and just to know that that's going to have a greater impact. Joy speaks louder than shade ever could. So keep that in mind. And thank you all so much for tuning in to A Prescription for Joy. And remember to check us out on socials at Joyful Collab. You can hit me up and DM me if you're interested in being a guest on the show. Would love to hear your perspective. And as we move forward, I'm super excited about sharing more about joyful spaces, but I'm really excited about a new fitness and wellness segment that I'm adding, and you're going to love this. So stay tuned for more information about that in the coming weeks. But in the meantime, I want to remind you all that this is a prescription for joy, and it's for anyone who wants to improve their effectiveness. I thank Dr. Renae Bryant for being my guest today. And I encourage each and every one of you to remember to keep thriving, keep shining, and keep choosing joy. See you next time on A Prescription for Joy.